What's up, everybody? Connor OHanlon here for the first episode of the Greater Society podcast. I'm very happy to get the first episode going. If you're a fan of anything that I've done in the past, you know that this is quite a bit different from the previous iteration of my program, the Con O Show, just from the setup, doing this live. So I hope you enjoy it. I hope you are able to engage if you are watching this live. And if you are not and you are listening anywhere else, you can feel free to catch the show. Normally, it'll be on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. and you'll be able to engage with me live rather than in the past where it's pre-recorded. Today, we are going to be going over a variety of different aspects of where I want to take the show and the media company overall. We're going to discuss a little bit about my political bona fides and what brings me here talking to you today. And then we're going to get a little bit of an example of what the show will really look like moving forward rather than having like the background of the show. It will really be like a segment of a future program. So with all of that being said, while you're here, we have started a brand new YouTube channel for this show. I'll be getting rid of the other anything associated with my old program will be deleted. So please do help us by subscribing to the channel. That's the biggest thing you can do, is subscribing and liking, commenting, all that good stuff. I'm not normally going to be front loading all this stuff in the future, but for today, it is important so that we can start chipping away at small milestones and really build what we're trying to build here. With that being said, we can dive right into what are we going to talk about today? What is this show? What is the Greater Society podcast and Greater Society media? Why are they two different things? So let me just start off with the Greater Society media is my idea, my concept of a business model, of a media company, one in which doesn't just focus on writing like let's say other local publications. It doesn't focus just on podcasting, which is my bread and butter. It's something that I'm rather practiced in, and it's not just YouTube videos, it's not just books. It's a conglomeration of all those things. As of right now, it's largely just me and my editor / producer Josh who work on things, but I do have help from other folks that are putting input here and there. The intro song to this today isn't anything that I own or that I made. It's my friend Brandon Baughan who made that music. You can go check that out on Bandcamp. I'll link it in the description after. So it's this media company is basically a way for me to highlight, whether it be local or international, everywhere in between, people that have inspired me, people that have impacted me in my life, but particularly ones that are impactful to the progressive movement. That brings me to the reason why it's called the Greater Society media. If you know your history, you should know that the Great Society was basically the second iteration of the New Deal. It was an extension of the progressive era from the mid 30s to through LBJ into basically Carter's administration. For the Democrats at least. So the Great Society was really focused on eliminating poverty, eliminating hunger, lifting people up, giving them economic justice. These are all principles of a progressive movement that are still alive today. However, when we look back over, I would say, the last 40 to 50 years, we have seen a steady decline from what we would expect from a progressive movement, i.e. the New Deal or the Great Society, to today's Democratic Party. So my idea and concept of the Great Society is the Greater Society. And it does kind of build off of ripping away the make America great again concept. It destroys that concept because on one hand, we already have certain aspects of American society and American culture and American history that are great, things that are unique, things that do make America unique in the global scale, whether it be the quality. We will obviously later on in future iterations of this show discuss this, the quality of our healthcare. Now, of course, the issue is health insurance and access to those things, or whether it be our freedoms based from the Bill of Rights, or whether it be Social Security and Medicare, which were extensions of, you guessed it, the Great Society. All of these things make America great. However, we need to look forward and say, how do we make a progressive movement that can implement these things through my idea here is a media company greater? How do we take the economic Bill of Rights that FDR talked about? How do we ensure that people have access to healthcare, have a living wage, have a place to live, have food? I mean, that just, like, I didn't even mention my friend Lindsay, who helps me out with a lot of the concepts, the artwork, and Connor, who's watching this, help me with the graphic design, the movements, and all of that stuff moving forward and giving my ideas a little bit more life too. It's this media company in and of itself is, my goal is to make it bigger. And I don't mean bigger to make money, because trust me, I don't make money doing this, but it's bigger to impact society and our local community specifically first, but to lift voices up. So yes, tonight you're listening to the Greater Society podcast. You might be watching me on YouTube, or you might be listening. The media part of that is the podcast one. The second thing that's going to come out, whether that be, it might still be a while, is my book, which will be the first like Greater Society media like publication. And then we'll have political education events. As you may or may not know, I've hosted one not too long ago. We just didn't give it the branding yet because we were finalizing stuff. But that is something that we will start to do online and in person when possible. But that is an extension of the media company. And now I am the one that did the first one. But my goal is to bring in people that have different expertise, that have different experiences, lift those voices up and encourage them to get engaged and speak. Personally, I have a specific target of in young folks to say, you can do this. You can go out and make a difference in your community. And you know enough, frankly, to do that. But I'm through this media company, I'm going to be getting articles, different types of media that you can, artwork, music. I know I asked Lindsay that we're working on having a new intro song to the show that she's going to write. So all these things where it's broader than me. And that was my whole idea, where in starting this show and this new version of this company, moving out of what I had done for the last 2 years. So we'll get to me in a little bit. But Greater Society podcast is an extension of the company, obviously. So what my goal here is to, one, educate folks that may not spend hours and hours and hours dedicated to political organizing or to reading books or to discussing politics with their friends, or they might not have access to resources that would be able to provide them that knowledge. My goal is to provide at least some value in the educational front and say, you know what, here's something that we're discussing today. It's a current event. Maybe you should think of it this way. So there will be episodes where it's just like this, where it's just you and me talking. I have other different layouts and graphics, and soon this won't be my background. I'm moving in 2 weeks, so I will have a different background very soon, so that will be nice. But it's not just going to be me every time. Although sometimes this is a necessary thing for me to get my ideas across and my, for lack of a better term, agenda through, and discussing about local issues, and again, all the way up to the international level. But second, it's going to be lifting those voices up. It's going to say, hey, I want this candidate to come on, or hey, I want this activist to come on, or I want this musician to come on and discuss how their life was impacted by X, Y, or Z. How can they apply what they've done in their life to politics or to organizing or to just inspire somebody else to take action in their community? It's all under that same umbrella of being educational, but also entertainment. So it's a weird amalgamation of things. I like that I'm not going to be dead set on having a guest every time. So if you are somebody that listens to podcasts that just has guests, this might not be that one for you. But if you like the combination of having guests here and there, and then also having just like, okay, this is the focused topic of today, or this is the focused events, then welcome here, because that's what I do. The podcast and the show going forward, it's going to get more polished, because this is all new to me doing it live. So usually I think people assume that I do a lot of editing or cuts or whatever it is in the old iterations of the show. I didn't, but this will be even more proof, because I'm live. I can see the chat. I see Jordan and Connor in there. So hi guys. It's that kind of engagement though that I'm looking to build. And as always, if there's specific guests that you're looking for me to bring on, then absolutely reach out. You can, drop it in chat, leave it in comments, or email us, greatersocietymedia.com or at gmail.com. Sorry. I do have amazing guests coming up. I can tease at least one because I confirmed it with him, but if you pay it attention, and later on for our first real segment of the show ever, in the PA primary for United States Senate, one of my first guests is going to be State Representative Malcolm Kenyatta, and that's a prime example of somebody that has made an impact at a young age for the progressive movement. He's not from Bucks County, so it's a little bit broader than just where my experience is, and that's something that I really value and I'm looking forward to. But there's also people that are going to be coming on that I just haven't confirmed, and I'm excited for them, and I get to ask them a million questions. So when they come up, be looking for those. So that's pretty much what the show is going to be. That's pretty much what the entirety of this company is. The goal of is to move the progressive movement forward as much as I can, as much as we can together. I'm going to be using my voice to advocate for others and make sure that they have a platform and that they feel welcome. And there's no better time than now to do that, because especially if you're watching this, you could be from anywhere in the world. But where I live in Bucks County, and in Bucks County, especially in the Central Bucks School Board, we're getting national news coverage. We're getting coverage for teachers getting fired for, protecting LGBTQ plus students. We're getting book bannings. We are having all this microcosm of American society right here. And there's no greater time than now to reassure young people in historically marginalized communities that you are welcome here. And I mean, you are welcome here on this show. You are welcome here in this audience. You are welcome here as a guest. You are welcome here in Bucks County. and in Pennsylvania and wherever you live. I will advocate for you, and that is what this platform is for. Jordan asks, will it be a website or just a social media base? Eventually, we will have a website. I have to convert an old form of my campaign website into the website that I want it to be, and that'll coincide with the platform base that my book is advocating for. So that will come, just not right off the bat. So the main place you're going to find most of the content for right now is on YouTube. You can find it on Apple, Spotify, and if you want to subscribe or support via Patreon, that's another way. And we're going to get articles published and all that stuff and get it out there. But for right now, this is the main spot. With all of that being said, I will pivot now to a little bit of like who I am. And I know a lot of people that may be watching may already know who I am. But for anybody that's new or anybody that's coming along in this process and has no idea how they stumbled across this 26-year-old kid talking about politics, well, I'll give you at least the shortened version. That way it's you have a little bit of background on my hopefully credibility and why I do what I do. So to start, I'm Connor OHanlon. I am the host of this show, and I'm the creator of this platform. I grew up I was born in North Jersey, but I grew up in Bucks County in Doylestown, Pennsylvania. I went to Penn State to get my bachelor's degree in accounting, which is what I do currently. I am currently an auditor. I am a CPA. So people always think I do taxes. I don't do taxes. I do definitely, hi Janet. I definitely do engage with the tax code. I definitely understand it because you have to do it to be a CPA, but that's just not my day job. I audit publicly traded companies that file with the SEC and are regulated by the SEC. So that's what I do in my day job. How I got here is a bit of a crazy winding tale, and how I'm going to get where I want to go. Hopefully, is a little bit straighter moving forward, but you never know, right? So, I graduated from college in 2018 from Penn State University, and that is where I kind of got my fire, I suppose, for politics. And the most basic way that I could put it is the 2016 election was the first election that I was able to vote in. Obviously in 2015 is when you had like the primaries leading up. 2015 is the beginning of the primaries leading up into 2016 for the actual general election. So, in that time period, I was sitting in my dorm, and I'd be playing video games, or I'd be coming back from the gym, and I would watch YouTube videos, and I would listen to podcasts, and I had a fascination with history. I've always had a fascination with history, especially American politics, and all that. I didn't obviously dive into it as much when I was younger, but the online space in that time was very polarizing. Might not be the exact phrase, because we live in a much more polarized time now, but the online space was still finding, especially on YouTube, was still finding its footing for politics and all that at the time. And you could just look at me and just be like, okay, yeah, he's this guy that likes to lift weights. He's a young white dude. Very easily, through what was in some of those videos, or what was on TV, or what was happening with Donald Trump, I know, like, retrospectively, like, I know why I kind of went down the path I did in a positive way. But people just like me, that look just like me, that have the same, roughly the same history, very easily wouldn't become the Bernie Sanders supporter. They became the Donald Trump supporter. So I think it's important to note that at that time we did see like a very big divergence, especially in young white men, where I watched the YouTube videos that radicalized people to the right. Now, I began to realize after, like, whoa, like, this is crazy. I mean, I watched some of the most ridiculous, what I think now are the most ridiculous creators at the time. However, back then I didn't recognize, and I didn't know enough to counteract their agenda. I didn't know how to engage and debate and push back and question the narratives that were being put out, at least to the same extent that I do now. And that's, again, partly why education is the pillar of this show. It's to say, hey, you know what? You might think that immigration's this big issue. Well, let me tell you why it's not. And again, we will discuss all of these issues, I mean, ad nauseum. But it's just knowing that, okay, at that time, I could have gone, in theory, either way. I did start engaging with YouTube channels like The Young Turks, which then led me to Secular Talk, and then led me to David Pakman. And like all of these progressive YouTubers were thrown into the mix versus all these other like right-wing or crazy, at that time it was like all these like anti-feminism, that junk, right? And I kept listening to the other progressive media. I'm like, wow, this is interesting, and this is good. And you start to reflect, you start to read. I started to read for fun, which was a new thing for me. I started to read and challenge my own opinions, and like, it's funny because at the time, like when Bernie was coming up, I didn't even believe that in tuition-free college. I didn't know that if I believed in free healthcare at the point of service, right? So there's a lot of these notions that really took digging, and like you don't see the personal growth that somebody goes through when they actually start to challenge themselves. And I'm glad that I did it. But I think that's important to note because I've never really gotten to discuss that on any of the shows that I've been on or on in campaigning or anything. Because it's kind of like, who cares? But also it's kind of like taboo to be like, oh, I could have gone that way and I could have gone that way. I could be even further radically left, right? However, the Bernie campaign really did ignite that fire in me where I started to be like, wait, how do you pay for Medicare for all? And like he had the answer. And it's like, well, how do you say that we should have tuition-free college, or we should forgive student loan debt? Or how much student loan debt actually is there? How much student loan debt am I going to have? And the development of being in college at the same time, it created a greater sense of empathy. So I'm grateful for that. Obviously, Bernie didn't become president. I still supported Hillary, which also took personal growth, I have to admit, because at the time too, I was upset that the progressive person didn't get it, and that person that I supported lost. And whether, no question, like whether you love Hillary or not, like I personally didn't love her as a candidate. I think she was the most qualified person to ever probably run for president. Especially in retrospect, it's easy to be like, yeah, obviously she was Secretary of State, Senator, etc. But she didn't hold some of those progressive values that I did. And we will discuss plenty of Democrats that are way worse, like Manchin or Sinema. But those are things that you have to learn through your own like political journey and say like, okay, what can I live with? What can I not live with? And I was like, oh, I'm going to vote for Jill Stein. And I remember like debating. And then I was like, all right, cut it out. Like you got to pick somebody that's going to actually has a chance to win and can make possible change when they get in there. So, again, this is where you start to weigh in that pragmatism of, okay, how do we get change done? How do we work together? And how do you accept maybe something that's not being perfect for being something that's better or good? And it is a tough balance. And there will be plenty of time to discuss that. And we'll discuss probably a little bit more today when we talk about the Pennsylvania primaries or other primaries. So from there, 2016, I remember the day after Trump got elected. I went into I had a sociology class as an elective and didn't really know like how to feel, like didn't really understand how people were grasping with the fact that Trump had won. I didn't really know how I felt at this time. Again, from 2015 to 2016, like the full year, like I'm talking early 2015 into the like December of 2016, like I had really started to dig into my own personal beliefs. So I started to have like a real grasp of my ideology and my understanding of things. Obviously, nobody knows everything, and I still don't know everything, obviously. But I started to feel confident, like, okay, this is actually what I believe in. And grasping that Trump had won, it almost like took the legs out right underneath me. And I had to figure out, okay, what can I do? What do I need to learn? And how do I move forward? So it kind of put a jolt into everything that I was doing. And, granted, I had all of 2017 where I would listen to every podcast, every YouTube video, everything that I could get my hands on. I started reading books. I would listen to interviews, old interviews of people. I would I would read Noam Chomsky books. I would do everything I possibly could to just better my understanding and my grasp of politics, history, etc. I read the Federalist Papers, front to cover. I mean, cover to cover. And like, that's not fun reading. But, that's why Alexander Hamilton, he's the man. He wrote most of them, at least. So, but 17 and 18, until May of 2018, actually, we're kind of just like developing. And then in 2018, I graduated from Penn State. I went to go vote in the Pennsylvania primary, ironically enough. And I showed up, and this is actually the story is part of my book, but I showed up and there was this old dude with a ponytail. His name was Stan, and he was working at the polling place. And he said, I'm Stan. I'm the committee person here with the Doylestown Democrats. How can I, help you? Like, are you here to vote? Whatever. And from there, I got an understanding of, okay, this group exists. What can I do with them? I didn't really know for a while. I kind of reached out to the Bucks County Democratic Committee. I just, figuring things out. I was trying to feel it out and see what's there. About a month goes by, and I show up to the Doylestown Democrats meeting. I said, "Hi, my name's Connor OHanlon. I just graduated from Penn State." Because you have to introduce yourself, by the way, at every Doylestown Democrats meeting. So if you come to one and I'm the chair, make sure you introduce yourself. But the first thing I said is, I just graduated from Penn State and I want to run for office. Everyone was like, "Oh, great. Claps their hands. So I sit down. Oh, okay. That was nice. And that was it. It's kind of radio silence for a bit. I introduced myself. I got to know Dan Wood, who went on to be township supervisor when we ran together in 2019. More on that in a second. He really kind of was the one person that I kind of latched onto and really tried to dig into, like, all right, what are we doing here? And I remember the 2018 election came, and the first person that I helped, like actually helped rather than just like donating money to, which is helping, don't get me wrong, but helping in like a ground effort game, was Wendy Allman. I went, and she was our state representative in the 143rd Pennsylvania State Assembly. And I showed up, I went and knocked doors for her, and little did I know that when I was done knocking that list, which, by the way, I went by myself, which usually I don't usually send first-time volunteers by themselves if I can help it. But I went totally by myself, didn't know what to say. I just had a stack of papers, and I just said, here, this is Wendy Allman, you should vote for her. And this is Steve Sanacero, you should vote for him. And when I got back to where I launched from, John Fetterman was actually there. At the time, he was running for lieutenant governor. I had previously met him, actually, but he was there, and it was awesome to meet him when he was running for lieutenant governor, because he was going everywhere. And I have a picture, because I had really long hair at the time, and I have a picture of me and him, and that's like one of my favorite pictures, even though I don't think I look particularly good. It's emblematic of like the start of what I was really looking to do with my life. And that day really changed everything. And then I worked the polls. Working the polls is my favorite thing. I love working the polls, especially on a busy day. And 2018 was a rainy, miserable election. And me and Dan worked together. And Wendy Allman actually pulled it off in 2018 and flipped a horribly gerrymandered 143rd district to Democratic control. And Steve Sanacero won in the Senate district that he was in the 10th. And John Fetterman and Tom Wolf won. So it gave me like a taste of, wow, like this was a historic election. This feels good. Helping these candidates feels good. I wonder what it's like to actually be the candidate like I wanted to do. So about a month or two goes on, and I just say, I really do want to do this. I really do want to run for state representative, well, we'll get to that. I really do want to run for township supervisor. And I met with Dan. I met with Jen Herring, who's a township supervisor. I met with Anna Payne, who at the time was the township auditor and then went on to run for township supervisor that same year. I met with all these people to gauge, like, okay, what does it take? What's the time frame? All that stuff. Remind you that I was 23 at the time. I won't, for the sake of keeping everything, clean, people not getting mad. Not everybody was thrilled that I wanted to run. Not everybody was happy that I was like this 23-year-old guy that wants to come in and do all this stuff, right? But it turned out that, it was my shot. It was my time to prove everybody wrong, right? So I go out, I do everything, get the signatures that you need to get. You only need 10 to get on the ballot for a local election like that. And I get myself there, and I win the primary election. Of course, I was unopposed, me and Dan together then. We were married by winning the primary. So whether he wanted to or not, and I like to think that he wanted to, but you'll have to ask Supervisor Wood. We became partners, and we really hit the ground running. And particularly, I'd say he did, and I kind of had to take a step back and learn from his experience. And that required self-reflection. That required the humbleness of saying, like, or the humility, I should say, of saying, like, I don't know what's going on here. You just tell me what to do and I'll do it. And I'm so grateful for that experience. And, what I did was I went to every event that you could think of. I had to learn the different precincts in the township. And again, this is all valuable information only because, like, if you took what I did and you wanted to do it in your place or your municipality, this is all stuff that you'll have to do. So all of that's to say, I went door knocking dozens and dozens of times. I knocked on, I would say, thousands of doors. I think we did like some 5,000 doors throughout. And that really cemented the idea of like, I can actually make a difference by talking to each individual voters at their door. And Jordan, no, it wasn't Dan's first time running. He ran in 2017 and he lost by, if I remember correctly, and he'd be mad if I said it wrong, but I think it's like 78. He has it tattooed, so you'll have to ask him. But that's a good, carry on point to say in 2019, that race, we ran together. We ran hard. We made sure, hey, make sure you vote for 2. Make sure you vote for the county commissioners. Make sure you do all this stuff, right? In a historic election in Doylestown Township, which had never been controlled by Democrats ever, and still hasn't, if you don't catch where I'm leading with this, we came up 38 votes short from winning 2 seats, beating 2 Republicans. Dan won, and I lost by 38 votes to someone that went on to become one of the most controversial township supervisors that we currently have. You can just look up Nancy Santa Cecilia if you would like to learn more about her. But that's to say, as a 23-year-old kid, just out of college, didn't have a full-time job. I'll also point out that I was working 4 part-time jobs while running for office. That was the grind that I knew that this is what I want to do. This is what I am doing. And I need to, connect all those dots. So yeah, I lost. And I remember finding out it was 3 a.m. probably at the bar. And it was hard. Like, it was heartbreaking. I didn't eat all day. The people were like, oh, you want a drink? I'm like, I don't even want water. It was, in retrospect, it's really not a giant deal for me personally. I mean, it would have been big for the township because we wouldn't have had the nutso that's in there now. But it was the best experience I could have to set me up for what I want to do and what I have done since. So in 2020, I ended up working on a congressional campaign, saw that in and out, saw how you had to get 1,000 signatures as compared to my 10 to get on the ballot. I saw how much money you had to raise. I saw the communication skills you had to get. I saw what to do and what not to do because we watched in a primary 4 candidates go at each other. And right after that primary was winding down, after the endorsement at least, I decided to, the chair of the Doylestown Democrats decided to step down. And as a 24-year-old, I said, why not me? Why not me? I can do this. I have the skills, I have the ability, and most importantly, I have the drive and the passion to get the job done. And there's an intangible skill that people don't know how to put their to catch the pulse of, and that's it. It's just drive, ambition, passion, and controlled ambition to say that, okay, yeah, I am old enough to run for Congress, but am I really ready to run for Congress at, whether that be 2 years ago or, this year? Maybe, maybe not. There's a lot of thought processes that go through each one of those. Because in 2020, I would have turned, I think I could have technically done that. So that is key. I decided to run for the chair of the Doylestown Democrats, which is in charge of two different municipalities, which 2 years ago had just been introduced to me at the polls. And look, am I some uniquely qualified, amazing leader that lifted the Doylestown Democrats out of the darkness of the darkest of days? No. But we did implement things that started to get people engaged, that started to bring new people in, brought new life into the organization. And I'll remind you that I'm the youngest person in the Doylestown Democrats, besides people that have joined since, I would say since the beginning of this year, because I've been working on that. I was the youngest person by at least 10 years. And I was leading the entire organization. We were raising a ton of money. We still are. But that was like the first real, tangible success that I've had politically ever. It legitimized losing that seat, as much as that hurt, began the legitimization of myself. But usually when people lose local elections, they disappear. They vanish. No one hears from them again. I came back, and that made a difference to people. That made me somebody that they could believe in, they could take seriously. So when I ran for chair, that further cemented me as a legit... And I didn't run unopposed. I actually ran against somebody. And it was a contested and not... Again, people tried to change the rules. People tried to not even bend the rules, literally tried to change the rules so that I wouldn't become the chair. So remember, if you ever take on the establishment, if you ever take on people that don't believe in your vision, you got to just keep pushing. Obviously have self-reflection, obviously have self-awareness, but you have to be able to learn and to say, okay, I got to go through this. I have to take the hits. I have to deal with the pain and the hurt that they're trying to give me so I can get over here and I can actually make the change possible. It's what makes a good politician, but it's also what makes a good activist, and it makes a good voter. It's somebody that can go through all of that and say, okay, we're going to make it happen. Let's do it. Despite all this BS floating around. After I ran for chair and I became the chair, I was leading the party for about a year and a half. I actually went golfing, and I was learning how to golf, and I get a phone call from our current tax collector, who says, "Hey, I can't run for this, personal issue. I have to drop myself off the ballot." And this is in late July. So it already had the primary, already locked things in. So we had to figure something out. And the best idea that we came up with was, hey, Connor's an accountant. He can run. So we had to replace him on the ballot by having a county vote, a unanimous vote to replace him on the ballot with me, where I ran for tax collector. And I'll be honest with you, that position was not my dream job. That was not something that I was truly ecstatic about, but it gave me an opportunity to be a part of my community further and to serve the community. So I was like, all right, this is what I got to do. And I don't do anything like that half-assed. It's way too much of a commitment to just be like, yeah, just put my name on the ballot, because that's important. It's a reflection of who you are and the work you're willing to put into it. 2 weeks later, and frankly, I skipped over helping Lolly run for mayor as well, and that was big in helping me find key people like Lindsay, like other folks that are younger, younger than me, I should say. Maddie, Rowan, Julian, all those folks that are you're hearing about actually with the Lenape story that has been occurring. I know them because of helping Lolly, and they helped me. So when I ran for tax collector 2 weeks into the campaign, me and Lindsay were knocking doors like crazy. I think we were knocking like 150 doors like every 2 days. and maybe 130 if I'm really being realistic. But I ruptured my Achilles tendon playing basketball, and even the organizers from the county level were like, damn, we're screwed if Connor can't knock doors in Doylestown Township. And, that made me feel good. One, that they were like, oh, like we need him. But also I was like, oh, crap, like they need me. So, I physically just could not walk. I had surgery for 8 weeks. And eventually we came up with the idea, and I should say Lindsay came up with the idea where she was just going to be like, all right, I'm going to buy a wheelchair. We're going to put you in the wheelchair, and we're going to go door to door. I'll push you. And, I told that story a lot when I was campaigning for state rep. We'll get there again in a second. And also, by the way, the nice part about doing this live and also not having my camera run out of battery is that I can go longer than an hour. So, yippee. So if you guys enjoy this, awesome. It's story time with Connor. But that action that Lindsay took told me everything that I needed to. Well, it told me a lot about her, obviously, but it put things into perspective. That somebody believed in me enough. I'll say this to everybody. You have to believe in yourself before anyone else will believe in you. That's just a fact. And obviously, through all the time that I had spent up until then, obviously I might have been the only one that really, really believed that I was the right person to do those things. But having someone that truly felt like, and Lindsay's not big. She's not like this like giant powerlifting Hulk that could just move me around. Like I'm a big dude. But she sacrificed that to do that for me. And when I could walk, not really walk, I put on a boot and use a cane or a crutch. I had people like Steve Sullivan and Tabitha Delangelo who were campaigning, to win the school board seat. But they saw me and lifted me up with them. And that's despite losing, again, in that tax collector seat by 86 votes, which, by the way, I outperformed other local Democrats in the same region, which is not to shame them in any way. It's just to say Democrats had a horrible year in Bucks County in 2021. And we actually did pretty well in Doylestown Township. But all of that really put into perspective that I'm doing the right thing. I'm doing it for the right reasons. And we're building something that is bigger than me. Again, going all the way back to why greater society. Bigger than me. That's the key to it all. So I lost in 2021. I was like ready to be like, all right, well, I'm not going to run for a while. And then 2022, I should say really in the end of 2021, Pennsylvania had the redistricting where they came up with the new state assembly districts, state senate district, etc. And Doylestown got moved into a better district for Democrats. The woman running in the 143rd where we were, Gwen Stoltz, got moved still. Well, I guess we got moved. She stayed in the 143rd. So I had told her, there's a lot of background stuff that you will learn about from me too, where it's not just about my local stuff, but how things kind of actually work in the local organizing. I said, like, I'm not going to run against you. I think you're a great candidate. And, if we're in the same thing, not going to run. We weren't, so I said, all right, let's do this state representative. Because that, and I'll be completely honest with you here, that was the thing that I wanted most in my entire political career. It's still the thing I want the most. Obviously, I'm not running or anything. But that position really, really was something that I put my heart and soul into. And each one of these processes has ended in different success rates. It's ended in different outcomes. And I'll remind everybody, and again, even though I'm an auditor, my busy season from January to March 31st, I work 6 days a week. I work about an average of 10 hours a day, at minimum 10 hours a day during the week. So to campaign on top of that and to get support, which in the end, in the endorsement vote, which I said to everybody, I said, if I don't get the endorsement, I'm going to drop out. I got like 40 some odd % on the first ballot. As a 26-year-old, figuring things out locally, now I'm buying my first home, but, somebody that didn't own a house, and that was used against me. I'll just tell you, like, the attacks, and this will become important when we talk about political organizing, political strategy, whether it be in a Democratic primary or whether it be in running against a Republican. It was used against me that I didn't own a house. It was used against me that I was young, which, remember that state representative is not like running for president, by the way. And I'm plenty old enough to run for these positions. And it was used against me that I was too progressive. All of those things had a counter narrative. All of those things, and again, if you live in the 29th, you should totally vote for Tim Brennan, who's running in that district. And this is not to knock him. This is just an honest opinion of a primary. But throughout the whole thing, I had to step back from being the chair of the party because people were accusing me of doing things that I would never do. People were accusing me of abusing my power as chair, which again, I would never do. People look for the easy attack because they didn't want to engage with me on the issues. People take the easy way out, and I'm not saying even just the candidates. I'm saying supporters, people on the outside, committee people that have the vote. And they want to just wipe it under the rug. People said, "Oh, he could never win." And a countywide official said I couldn't win. And I got 40 something % of the vote. So I stayed true to my word. And what brings me here today is because of that, I dropped out of the race. And I'm telling you all of this, especially because you have to believe in yourself. You have to be willing to take the risks. You have to be willing to keep moving forward. You have to be willing to sacrifice to do all this stuff. And I've made those moves. And I'm going to tell you this now, and I'm going to transition then from there. When somebody tells you, if you're a young person, if you're 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, all the way up, to whatever they say. And if they say this, don't take it personally. Because I don't. But it does make me mad. When they say that you are the future of the party, of this country, of anything, remind them that you, me, and all of us, we are here now. We are not the future. We are the present. We are here now. It's not enough to say the same old is going to get the job done, because it's not, it hasn't, and it never has. It took someone like FDR to threaten to pack the Supreme Court to get Social Security passed through the New Deal. It took someone with the, putting it nicely, the negotiation skills of LBJ to get something like Medicare passed. History, and I said this in campaigning, history relies upon young people taking action. History relies on progressive leaders that are 20, that are 30, standing up and saying, this is wrong, and we're going to make that change possible. So yeah, when you listen to some of the stuff that I talk about, I might be angry. You should be angry. You talk about some of the stuff that has happened over the last, let's just use my age, 26 years. The deterioration of the middle class. The housing crisis. And, extremely topical for this week, gun violence that has affected my generation, Generation Z, or as I will call them moving forward, Zoomers, and the generation after them. We are not the future. We are here right frickin' now. So that's what brings me here now. I know that's about 40 minutes of my own background, but I think it's important. I think it's useful, and I think that, at least you have some nice little background on where I'm coming from. I'm honest, and I can't hold myself back sometimes. So this is a good outlet to do so, to let it out and talk about the things that matter to us all. So yeah, I might not be like hyper specific sometimes. You'll have to forgive me for that, but I'm honest. There's at least that. So with that, I'm going to test out some of our really cool graphic switching and all of the the new technology that I have on this show. So we're going to talk about the Pennsylvania primary. So this is just another segment that we can talk about where it's important. I can kind of reflect on my opinions on some of the candidates and just give you a little bit of a taste of what a normal, regular show of the Greater Society podcast is and what it will be like. So we're going to go transition over here. So I think, if you love those transitions in the graphics, give it up for my buddy Josh, who did all of that. But we're going to discuss, and also just to note, not normally is this, I'm pointing opposite, is that just not going to be just a picture. We're going to be able to look at clips and respond to videos moving forward, which I think is also great to do live and to provide commentary on. So just if there's something that you specifically want addressed, shoot it on Twitter, on Instagram, email us. All of that stuff is good because we can do it as quick as you'd like. So that's also a good way to bring awareness to topics. However, when it comes to the Pennsylvania primary, I have a very Bucks County centric viewpoint of that. So you'll have to take what I say with a grain of salt, but we can start from the top and then we'll work our way down. And The top of the ticket, really, the focus of the entire non-local elections, like the state representative election that I was in, say, that really focused on the Senate race. And then on the Republicans, you had the gubernatorial race. And for the Democrats, we had John Fetterman, Connor Lamb, Malcolm Kenyatta, and I believe Alex Sahil, I believe, is the other person's name. But they weren't particularly too locked into the entire count of the statewide election. So of all of those, like if I had done an election preview, I would have told you that my vote was being casted for Malcolm Kenyatta, and I proudly cast that vote. And again, Malcolm's going to come on the show, so we will discuss that with him. But that's for a number of reasons. Because one, and I'll leave it at one. I'll give it two, and number two is more important now. Number one is he was a progressive candidate. He supported the number one issue that I cared about, and that's Medicare for all. But number two, I reject the notion that somebody should cast their vote for somebody just because they think they can win. I reject the notion that somebody should cast their vote because that person is, quote, and I'm like, I can't roll my eyes back far enough in my head, unelectable. People said the same thing about me. Again, people that know me intimately, that relied on them getting, like, in their elections, relied on me working for them to win, and they will rely on me next year to do it, said, I, Connor OHanlon, cannot win. I'm an unelectable. I happen to disagree. And that's fine. And I'd have to prove them wrong. And I will someday. And Malcolm represented something different and spooky because he's 32. He's a black man from Philadelphia, and he is a gay man. So, yeah, I get it. For some people, they're like, oh, that's unelectable in, this county and that county. And it's like, well, maybe not. So to me, it was like, I'm just going to vote my conscience. I think that John probably is going to win. And John, I'm happy to have John as my other choice. And I'll talk about him in just a second here. The other person, Connor Lamb, who people mistook me for him when I was knocking on their door getting signatures, which I don't look like him, but so be it. And I also don't spell my name the same way. I personally had a giant issue with the way that Connor Lamb was running his campaign. I had a giant issue with running the campaign not on issues, but on being, again, electable. Because what makes someone electable, usually, is being popular, is being likable, is supporting policies that people like. People got this false sense that, because he won in this congressional district, which, great, he might be amazing for that congressional district. But because he won there, he could win statewide, unlike everybody else, is ludicrous. You guys will hear quite a bit about this. Being a moderate, a quote moderate, does nothing to ensure that you're going to get moderate votes or that you're going to get Republican votes. In fact, I think it's starting to wane on left people, leftists, progressives, even, people that consider themselves liberals. I mean, I know for a lot of people these are all the same, but they're, minute differences. being moderate, and again, not really moderate necessarily, doesn't do anything. The policies don't get people, yeah, like I'm so excited for milquetoast centrism. That's just not the case. We see it on a lot of different levels. And look, Connor Lamb was pretty straightforward with his answers when he would be asked on like fracking or any number of issues. But he has the wrong issue set. He did not have what it took to win. And that leads me to John Fetterman, who did win despite having a stroke a couple days before the election. John represents something different. John represents someone that feels genuine, other than some of his like cringy text messages and emails, which me and Josh laugh about. When you are there and he gets that aura of like, yeah, this guy's like a wrestler or a biker or, the trash man. Like, he feels just like an everyday guy. And people like that. I don't know why in certain areas of life people just assume that you have to be a lawyer to just be a senator. It's not the case. You don't have to be this polished, like, yeah, like, look at me. Yeah, that might be nice. It might be historically what that is. But John is different. I personally, again, supported Malcolm because I saw a lot of myself in him. I saw a lot of the same overlap in policies. And frankly, John's backing off of Medicare for All specifically stood out to me. That's my number one issue. But, it took me until like the last day to like really cement, yeah, I'm going to vote for Malcolm. Because, again, John, in a one-on-one with Connor Lamb, I'm easily voting for John Fetterman. But it wasn't a one-on-one, right? So it's like, why necessarily should I? And the thing is that with polling, I kind of knew that John was probably going to win by a healthy margin, right? So even when I was working the polls, people would say like, oh, like I want to vote for the most progressive person. And I'd say, well, you got two choices. You got Malcolm and you got John. Like, those are your people. I'll tell you why I support Malcolm or or why you should support John Fetterman. And either of them are good, in my opinion. So that's the Senate race on the Democratic side. John Fetterman, I'm excited to see him recover and get back on the campaign trail, and I'd love to have him on at some point and revisit the glory days of 2016 where I met him on the bridge at Penn State while we were waiting to go see Bernie, and then in 2018 where again that kind of kicked off my political career locally. The Republican side is actually kind of crazy because we still technically don't know right now, on Thursday the week following, who won. The Republican primary is going to a runoff between Dave McCormick and Dr. Mehmet Oz, who, as you probably all know, is a reality TV star, or not a reality TV star, a talk show host on cable TV. And, there's nothing, again, when I say, like, John Fetterman reminds me of, like, the trash man, it's also okay to be, a TV star. There is a balance between everything to be like, okay, we want people with different backgrounds. We look at, I might get her name wrong, Alexandra Hunt, who was a former stripper to pay her way through college tuition. And people just focus on like, oh, wow, former stripper. And they don't listen to like Okay, well, she supports Medicare for all, Green New Deal, cancellation of student loan debt, all that stuff, right? And again, that's in a primary. I don't know that Dwight Evans. I personally don't know that much about him, but I did like loosely follow that primary. All that's to say, like, people with different backgrounds are good. You want people with different backgrounds. You don't want everyone to be a lawyer. That's just you don't want that. However, it is kind of like, I mean, it's not even ironic. It's so predictable that like the next person that is likely to become the Republican nominee in Pennsylvania, is Dr. Oz, who's just a doctor on TV. If I had to guess, the recount's gonna probably lead with Dr. Oz being the winner, and in a one-on-one, John Fetterman, I'm hoping, I don't pray, but I'll pray for this, will crush him. The Pennsylvania Senate seat might be the deciding factor on Democrats holding on to the 50-50 majority. Might be a 51-49 if we're really lucky. And if we lose that seat, I think we're in for a world of trouble. So I'm going to do what I can to help. I'm going to spread the message however I can, and I'm going to go, volunteer and do all the stuff that I normally do to help him, John Fetterman, defeat Dr. Oz, most likely. And again, if it's Dave McCormick, then so be it. I actually do want to mention really quickly a little bit about how we as Democrats and progressives really should look at identity and say what's good, what's bad, and what can we work on in our messaging. Because I think, honestly, if Kathy Barnett had won the nomination for the Republicans, it would have provided them I should say it would have provided us a really, really challenging messaging campaign. And I say this 100% seriously. Despite saying that I think that Republicans, a lot of the voters wouldn't vote for her, honestly, because she's a black woman. But rhetorically, from our perspective as progressives and Democrats, I think we need to get better at identifying, like, okay, we have someone like Summer Lee, who's running in Allegheny County, who is a young, black, progressive female that won her race, but at the time was running against Steve Irwin, who I personally met at a political event where he was just looking around to see, hey, I want to run for something statewide or whatever. Just, I just need some money. And it's just disgusting. So we have to look at, like, beyond just the identity of just saying, like, here's a black female and here's a black female. They're not the same. Here's a white man and here's a white man. They're not the same. Here's, we had and this is exactly what I'm saying with, like, the challenges. Like, we people in the Democratic Party were afraid of running Malcolm Kenyatta as a senator. And I think they are wrong. But the Republicans didn't not choose Kathy Barnett because she's a black woman, but they are not capable of putting genuine candidates in front of people and saying, like, here's our person. But that would have stripped away a lot of what people, I genuinely am afraid of. That would have stripped away a lot of, like, just simple, like, baseline talking points that we need to get better on. Rhetorically, we need to be stronger on. We need to be able to say, yes, we need a diverse party, and we need diversity in our elected officials. That's why you elect somebody like Malcolm Kenyatta, you elect somebody like Summer Lee, you elect somebody like, Alexandra Hunt, who didn't win, and Malcolm Kenyatta, who didn't win. But they have, Malcolm has won before, and Brian Sims, who didn't win. It's rather frustrating. So, as we move forward, we should look at how we want to address the, elephant in the room. It's not something we have to cross that bridge right now. I just want us to be better. Like, I'm tired, even in my election, like, for state rep. And again, I actually really liked, I ran against a really strong progressive woman in Liz Sheehan for the school, she was on the school board. And, like, personally, especially afterwards, we got to know each other, and it's a lot better, and we're, like, I think we align on a lot of things. But I think we have to just get a hair beyond just like, yeah, that's the identity I like, so let's go with that. Because it does still happen. And yeah, okay, it does sound funny from a white dude saying that. I got you. I'm really not even talking about myself in this. I'm just using myself as an example because it's comfortable that I know that, like, Liz and I will be cool. Because she endorsed me after that, right? So it's just an easy example of saying, like, look, people wanted to support a woman. That's fine. But when Republicans want to support a white person or a white man, like, like, you could see, like, me start to cringe. Like, it's not right, like, to just be like that. It's good to say we want to elect the first gay state representative, Brian Sims, right? That's great. And we can factor it in, but it needs to be part of the package, not just the whole thing. And I just hope that we begin to evolve and grow on that matter. That's enough on that, though. So the Senate 1v1, I hope John recovers well and he's ready to go because the people need him. We need he has a lot of money, so that's good too. And then obviously we have the governor's race. The governor's race was locked up for Josh Shapiro since, like, before he even announced. I mean, I was there when he announced it in Bucks County. Josh is a good guy. I'm excited to help him. And the guy that he's running against, Doug Mastriano, of course, was a big insurrectionist, basically, supporter. So when we compare these two, we're gonna see a direct... We're basically going to have to rely on people turning out for the Senate, I think, to basically align and say, here's how we're going to engage. Here's how we're going to vote. And if we can get people out for John Fetterman, we can get them to vote for Josh Shapiro. And if we get Josh Shapiro elected, we will be able to protect a woman's right to choose. We will be able to veto Republican nonsense when it comes to the climate, when it comes to anti-LGBTQ legislation across the state, when it comes to gun legislation, again, topical for the week. All of this boils down, which I would have to say, potentially the Senate and the governor's races, they might be tied, but, like, locally, the governor's race is going to affect you a lot more if you live in Pennsylvania than if you than the Senate race, unless, of course, if we lose the majority in the Senate. So there's a lot going on there, and that's why it's so vital to get people out for that top of the ticket there, because Mastriano is so bad. Like, they will immediately pass an all-out. I would probably guess an all-out ban on abortion, like day one. So we have to be ready to mobilize and organize and get people out for those reasons. So I mean, like, that is what it is. Josh is. I'm excited to work for him, and I'm excited that I was with him throughout this process. But also, that also doesn't mean that we shouldn't criticize where criticism is necessary. So I think getting people out and putting forth a proactive, and this is something that is commonplace when we look at candidates in different areas, is being proactive in their messaging and their campaigning strategies. So we will see how that goes. Then moving down the line, and Sam, I have to be honest with you, I don't know the exact ruling on that case. I was on vacation all last week, so I'd be lying to say that I know the exact ruling on it. So if you want to give me a little summary of what it is, like, I don't have the exact details on the screen here. I was in Mexico for a week, so you'll have to forgive me. So I think it's something with the Innocence Project, but I don't know. You'll have to inform me. But moving down a little bit, we'll go to the lieutenant governor's race, which frankly, like, I could care less about the Republican side, but on the Democratic side, I'm good friends with Brian Sims, and Brian came up short to Austin Davis, which Austin Davis does represent the western end of Pennsylvania, so it's a strategic choice that Josh Shapiro had. And I think in the grand scheme of things, I'm not going to go too long on it, but the grand scheme of things is people underestimate the endorsement of the party. And when you underestimate the endorsement of the party, you underestimate the impact that a committee person can have or a state committee person can have. So, for example, the state committee endorsed Austin Davis after Josh Shapiro did. And Shapiro wanted something that was east and west. That's my understanding of why he did that. That's a fine strategy, but I think that in the endorsement process, Austin being able to secure that locks up votes, because you get people to hand out the stuff that says, here's our endorsed candidates, and it doesn't say Brian Sims, it says Austin Davis. And that's why I dropped out of my race when for state representative. It's not gonna say Connor OHanlon. It would just be a blank name. It would just be blotted out, right? So, and I see Eric's on here. Like, if Eric didn't get the endorsement, or if he did, like, if he stayed in, but like if Ashley got the endorsement, which she did get the endorsement, then like anybody in that race would be blotted out. So that is necessary. Engaging with the process is necessary. And I mean that from a candidate's perspective, but more importantly, if you are watching this, you can get engaged in your local municipality, become a local committee person, endorse people running for Congress, running for state rep, running for state senate, running for countywide officials. That's all within your grasp. And guess what? You want to run. Well, Eric, hear me out. Lamb did not get the party endorsement. He did not get the actual party endorsement from the state party. The state party is the one that locked it in on the goldenrods. If you don't get the state endorsement and you don't get the county endorsement, you're not on the goldenrod. If somebody else got it and it's handed out to voters, the party actually removes people's names from what they hand out, or they fill in the person to vote for, basically. And you can think that's right or wrong, but I'm just telling you that's how it is. So, but that's why I'm saying, if we wanted somebody, let's just use John Fetterman as the example, because Fetterman performed horribly with the state committee. But then you see when it goes to an actual vote, he performed exponentially greater. So the disconnect is astronomical, and that's why we need people to run for these seats. That they're not the sexy seats. They're not the ones that you're going to make policy. They're the ones that are in the background, the smoke-filled back rooms, if you will, where you actually have to engage and come up with strategy. And the strategy is flawed, obviously. And that's what I'm saying with Lamb. He wasn't popular with the voters. But if he got the state party nomination or the endorsement, it would have been the race that everybody was trying to make it up to be. It wouldn't have been a 30 or 25% just blowout from Fetterman. It would have at least been extremely close. Now, let me clarify and say, it is not impossible to beat an endorsed candidate. It is just extremely rare, and it's extremely hard. The time, money, effort, volunteers that you need are astronomical. I think it's honestly an easier effort for the progressive movement to go within the party, take those seats, and organize. But it takes a village, basically. It takes everybody taking on a role in whatever capacity that might be. It might just be, hey, I can write postcards, or hey, I can become congressman, right? So that is where I'm looking at going. So, and Eric, good luck in running for Middletown chair. Yeah, Sam, I'm reading you right now. It slipped under the radar for a lot of people, but essentially SCOTUS held that if a case is tried in state court and evidence that could provide innocence was not introduced, it can't later be introduced in federal court, even if it can provide someone's innocence. If you're laying it out the way that that I have to do research on the case, so take my opinion with a grain of salt, but that sounds utterly ridiculous. If you cannot present, like, let's just take an example would be like, if you have later on, if you had a case from 20 years ago and you have new DNA evidence, like it would be ridiculous to say like we can't have new data or new evidence or new physical evidence. I mean, for that matter, like we didn't have the same technology. So if I'm reading that correctly, that seems nonsensical, but that's the Supreme Court that we have. That is the Supreme Court that we have. We can't, like, if there's not another reason for voting for John Fetterman, let's just say you're the most centrist, down the middle. You could even be like slightly right wing, but you're upset with what the Supreme Court is doing. You need to vote for John Fetterman. If you live in another state where the senator's up for election, you need to vote for the Democratic candidate for Senate, because they're the folks that choose that vote to approve the Supreme Court nominees. And in 2016, when I was, I was just learning all this stuff, right? Oh, wait, why are they not approving Merrick Garland? And again, Merrick Garland would not have been like RBG or any of these or even KBJ, like would not be anywhere near as good as them, just being frankly honest. But instead of getting him on the court, you got Neil Gorsuch from Trump. And then you have two more from Trump, making it a 6-3 majority court. So the Supreme Court, we could talk about that all night. So I hope that gives you my opinion, Sam. I'm a big fan of looking at people, at least giving them second chances. So even if someone wasn't innocent, and again, I think that the case is probably more for specific, like more violent crime or, more serious crimes. But even if, that was the case, like we have to deal with that. The entire prison industrial complex puts people puts people in prison for reasons that are nonsensical for reasons that they have to be there for no reason for as long as there should be. It's not rehabilitation, it's punitive. Is there a faction of the left who is not supporting Fetterman in the general? No. My understanding is that pretty much everybody on the left is supporting Fetterman in the general. I think most people on the left supported Fetterman even in the primary. A lot of folks. I mean, I think there are people like me who liked Malcolm slightly better, but I don't think that people that like Malcolm don't like John Fetterman. So I don't think so. The point is that if you have even some clown like Dr. Oz, or if it's McCormick, you still have like a 50-50 shot of that seat going Republican. Now, I think once Fetterman locked it down, and I think when Mastriano was locked down for governor, they did kind of switch like some of the leanings for like governor and Senate. But honestly, this is life or death for like Pennsylvania democracy. And I know like people do this hyperbolic thing all the time, but it is time to say this is for real. Like we need a senator who's going to fight, and I've seen John Fetterman as a lieutenant governor. He's been great as lieutenant governor, like top notch. And we need somebody who's gonna. And Josh Shapiro has been a good attorney general, so we need some people that are going to be in there fighting. But it's just about knowing how to mobilize, how to engage, and how to proactively get your message out. And I know I'm probably just preaching to the choir for people that are listening. But, for anybody that might be on the fence of like, oh, like, maybe Dr. Oz isn't that bad, or maybe Dave McCormick isn't that bad compared to Fetterman, and I don't know what would make you feel that way. It's just saying like Pennsylvania relies heavily on where I live in Bucks County. I mean, you guys watching this, a lot of you guys live there, it seems too. So Bucks County, Montco, Chester County, like these collar counties around Philadelphia, that's really where, like, in my opinion, the swing happens. So yeah, obviously Fetterman's gonna crush it in Philadelphia, and he's gonna crush it in Pittsburgh, but it's those places across that matter. And also we have to elect people like Summerlee, who's gonna help turn out the vote for people in November, because they're progressive leaders. They're engaging. They're inspiring. So there's a give and the take. So that's kind of that organizing piece. And then when we move down locally, I think we had mostly uncontested primaries below for Democrats and Republicans. It is notable to say that Brian Fitzpatrick in Pennsylvania's 1st congressional district was challenged. The challenger did not really do too well, but if you live in Doylestown in particular, and I don't know that this is the case everywhere, but I do have evidence of it happening in, Eric said he's from around Middletown. I have evidence of it happening lower in the county as well. So whether it be Middletown or like Bristol, of these, I'm going to use the candidate as like the example, but the guy's name was Alex Enton, who was running against Brian Fitzpatrick. And yeah, like those folks aren't, and I shouldn't have to say this at this point, but they aren't your like father's Republican Party, which again, if you guys know me or know anything about me, like I've never given Reagan or any of them a break, because they're horrible. They were terrible presidents, and they led to the creation of Donald Trump. But these folks are the core of that MAGA like background. Like they are the fabric of the whole thing. They're the spine. And yeah, like they will still come out and vote for Brian Fitzpatrick. So for us organizing for Ashley Ehas, like we have to be ready for them. But it's notable that the the actual, and yeah, Con said, you said I saw a lot of end signs, never heard a word about that candidate, because the guy wasn't unknown. Fitzpatrick smeared him as a socialist, which is kind of funny. Um, it goes to show, that also goes to show you that they just call everyone socialists. But he was Russian, so they were using literally like Russian propaganda. But put that all aside. There was a significant portion of committee people, Republican committee people, Republican volunteers that supported this guy. And yeah, he got like a tiny portion of the vote. And I know Andy Meehan, who I've gone back and forth with on Twitter quite a few times, he ran in 2020 against Fitzpatrick. And this is just all important because the Pennsylvania's 1st congressional district is like a microcosm of America to some extent. So we also have to just see, like, how do we combat it here, and how can we learn from places elsewhere? So these committee people, these volunteers were rabid. They were nationalistic, would be an understatement. And they have absolute blatant disregard for civility. So we should not be handicapping ourselves. And I'm not saying like, oh, we got to get out there and fight with them. No. We need to beat them. We need to out-organize them. We need to outwork them. And frankly, when it comes to beating all of these folks, whether it be Brian Fitzpatrick, who these people think is too centrist, or it's beating Doug Mastriano, we need to get the money, not handicap ourselves, and beat them. We need to outspend them. Now, how we do that and keep true to our principles, that is tough. That is tough. And I'm not saying it's tough to take money and keep your principles. That's not the hard part. But it's saying, okay, they're going to get millions of dollars from, oil companies. They are going to get millions of dollars from the gun lobby. So how do we counteract that? You and I have to do that. We have to be able to outwork them in any gap that we can't raise the money in. So Josh Shapiro has raised a ton of money. So hopefully that helps. John Fetterman has raised a ton of money. So hopefully they can trickle down. But I just think it is a prime example. And I will leave off on this. In Doylestown Borough, there was a woman who was set to be charged today because she is quoted as talking about shooting Nancy Pelosi in the head on January 6th, charging the Capitol. I'll say allegedly saying all of this, but it's documented in plenty of news articles. But for my sake, allegedly she said this. She was set to be charged today. If she was going to have charges today. I'm drawing a blank on the actual word. But she got it pushed back. But she became a committee person in Doylestown Borough. Not Doylestown Township. Not, Pennsyltucky. Doylestown Borough. A place where we have Dawn Bancroft. She was a former CrossFit gym owner. And that gym got shut down because CrossFit, which is not particularly a left-wing organization, sentenced. Thank you. She was supposed to be sentenced today. She wasn't. It got pushed back. But in Doylestown Borough, where we have 9 out of 9 borough council seats are filled with Democrats, we have the mayor's seat, we have the tax collector, we have all of these organizing She is an example of what is coming. Me and Dan Wood, we talked to each other about this in the past. And again, like, even if strategically, like, we have different opinions, whatever. But me and Dan have talked about this in the past and trying to figure out how do we go about this. Not just with her, but Nancy Santos-Cecilia, who I lost to by 38 votes. This is the fight that we will have for the rest of our lives. If you are my age, you're younger than me, even if you're 20 years older than me, these folks are the people that we will have to outwork, outspend, and outorganize. These are the people that we will have to mobilize against, use our own rhetoric to win people over rather than letting people fall into fascism, letting people fall into the fake, xenophobic, racist, sexist garbage that a lot of these people spew. And I'll close off with this because this is always important to note, and I think on the first episode of this show, it is important to say, Republican voters are not your enemy. Republican elected officials are. And I make that clarification because I love people that are Republicans. And I should say, people that I love are Republicans. People that I care about. And sometimes people like us that engage with this stuff, that engage all day, every day in political junkie world, you need to make sure that you understand people don't listen to the news 24/7. People can fall prey to the narrative of a YouTube video or to a Dinesh D'Souza documentary that they don't know why it's wrong. They don't understand why certain things are necessarily bigoted. And jumping down someone's throat, although maybe comforting if you're online, isn't the reaction you should want, isn't the reaction you should foster, isn't the way that you should treat another person, because at some point, you, me, and your mother could have been wrong, could have been just misinformed. So when it comes to Republican voters, they're your neighbors, they're your friends, engage with them. Talk to them. Figure out why. Tell them the reality of the situation that we're in and say, hey, look, I know you think that, Ronald Reagan might have been the greatest president on earth. We'll have to agree to disagree. But I want you to know that my son should have the same rights that your son has, even though they're transgender. Or my daughter should have the same rights as my grandmother when it comes to right to an abortion. And these are common sense things. And I'll just say this from history of knocking doors and engaging. Republican voters can be won over. Republican voters can be talked to, and you can actually engage with them. Independent voters, you can actually engage with them. Now, there's going to be people that just, you're better off with not engaging. But I'm just telling you, if we want to have hope for this country to create the greater society that I'm talking about in this show, engage with the person. Engage and grapple with why they believe that. Don't just throw a million facts. Don't just do, because that doesn't work. Address the underlying issues, and then you can build. I've made Democrats out of staunch Republicans. It's just because I had the patience and ability to actually talk to them. I didn't have that ability for a long time. I didn't come out of the womb saying, you know what, I really want to be a politician. In fact, I became an accountant because I was introverted. But I forced myself to develop that skill, and I've kept a cool head when you argue with people, because in the past I have not kept a cool head. And you're never gonna win someone over just getting angry and screaming at them, right? Listen to them, engage with their ideas, and maybe don't tell them they're wrong. Say, here's my perspective. Here's something. After we discuss, you could read this and it might be informative for you. Or here's my son or my daughter that it might be impactful for you. Just some closing thoughts on that, and I hope we can engage. Maybe someday I'll just bring some Republicans on here and discuss things with them. It's hard to say because a lot of the people that you see in the public are those radicals. And that's why I think it's important to note, like, yes, Republican candidates, Republican elected officials, although it sounds like an extreme word, are enemies of the people, frankly. That means that you have to be able to and willing to work, put the time to get them out of office by electing Democrats, and specifically progressive Democrats that will fight to ensure that everybody has the basic civil rights that we want, the basic economic rights that we want, and frankly, we all deserve. So, yeah, it's going to take time. It's going to take effort, and we're going to have to organize. We're going to have a lot of these elections, hopefully, where we actually get our asses kicked. But you have to be able to engage and to decide this is worth fighting for. So, with that being said, I'm going to transition to, oh yeah, me on the text. Boom. I'm still getting used to it. But thank you all for watching. Thank you all for listening. If you were listening to the audio version of the podcast, thank you for everyone in the chat for engaging. I will get better at reading it and being engaging throughout. It is tough, and especially for some of these things, there's a lot of moving parts. So I appreciate you guys watching. If you have been watching and you are not already, please hit the subscribe button down below to help us grow and get our first 100 subscribers. I know that sounds like a little teeny number, but got to start somewhere. So help us get to 100 subscribers. If this show was informative to you in any way, maybe inspirational, or maybe it was just engaging and entertaining, you just listened to it in the background, and you would like to contribute to help me pay Josh, because I'm not making any money on it, I'm just paying Josh for these wonderful graphics, then please go on over to patreon.com/patreon.com/greater society media to support the show for as little as $5 a month. You can do more, and obviously if you can't afford that, you can just chill right here on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to it, and turn your notifications on, so at least when you know I'm going to go live, or if the audio is live. With that, thank you so much for listening to me ramble for almost 2 hours. So you guys, if you made it this far, you either love pain by listening to politics so much, or you enjoy the show. So I hopefully it's more the latter. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all next week.